So does this give me a free rein to complain about Paul?
Sure.
You have free reign to do whatever you want, Mike, within reason. Just, don't
Right? Don't shock us.
be careful now, but go ahead.
I was just, if other people, that many people are actually interested in this.
It's amazing, isn't it? I just want to go back to the collect for a moment.
Yeah.
And the question that John raised about what needs to be done with our church. And it does bring to mind, of course, all the stories that have gone on about the Roman Catholic Church, particularly in the Pope's visit to Canada with the schools. I just want y'all to be sure and know that the Episcopal Church was as deeply involved with these residential schools in the United States as well.
Absolutely.
And that we have a whole lot of responsibility for what has happened in the past, all the way into the I'm going to say 1960s, but maybe it was Canada that was into the 1990s. But yeah, the church is not perfect. We do need to be cleansed. We do need to be defended, but we're just not perfect as a community.
No.
Or an institution.
Defended from what? I mean,
Well, that's a good point.
If you're Christian in Syria, maybe, as being but I just wonder how, it's just interesting to me. What does that say to us these days in 2022, that as opposed to, I could think Thomas Cranmer's worried about all those crazy Catholics. Gotta watch them. And, they got the Muslims on the beaten at the edges of our empire and all that sort of thing. It sounds kind of imperialistic and all that. And so I just wonder about it. I wonder about
this is before the imperial time, because it's in the 1500s. And I know Henry wants to say anything, but I do want to say the defense that we need is from evil, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
Okay, Henry, take it away.
Thanks. I remember the first time, this was about 20 years ago, the first men's book group, the only men's book group that I've ever joined. One of the members dropped out of a Catholic seminary in San Francisco because he was tired of being hit on by fellow seminarians and faculty. And so, so this is a long thing. And Deacon Vic is absolutely right. The Episcopal Church has its own demons and to deal with, and we have fallen short in our own ways. That's all.
Yeah, but in the present, I'd have to say that defend the church today means all bodies of worshiping Christians. Here comes Laurie. And I don't have a good answer, actually. I don't have anything to add actually to what Deacon Victoria said.
Well, I think we need to remember what Jesus said, is that the people that come to him are sinners, and that and there's this quotation that is morphed to the church is the place where it's about the people who need to see the physician and not the people who are healthy, that the church is filled with sinners. And for the most part, most of us, we've been working through these things and becoming better and more loving and more godly people and more righteous. But people fall apart. We're composed of a people that are not perfect. They have their flaws. And from those flaws, we can have problems.
I'm on board with you when you talk about defending as if you need a rooting. I'm bored of you about defending church against evil, defending like the people that make up the church. What frustrates me, what I think is where the church has gone wrong, especially when it's faced with challenges and scandals, is it's been about, whether it's the Episcopal Church, the Catholic Church, or any church, it becomes about defending the institution. That's where they go wrong. And I've seen that happen. I've seen what happened when there's been allegations, scandals and child abuse and sex abuse and things that involve the church. And immediately everybody, the powers that be, want to circle the wagons and defend the institution. And that's a bad path, that the church has followed too often, I would say.
We saw that most recently with the fundamentalist Southern Baptist Church, their convocation trying to make the full-time guys at the top give them records. Just had a hard time doing it. Well,
so what track are we on today? We're on track 1 or track 2?
Track 2. We're on track 2 this entire Pentecost season.
Okay. Well, we should go on then. You all want to do Ecclesiastes? You interested in Ecclesiastes? Or you want to go on to the Psalm? Anybody like Ecclesiastes?
I've been practicing Ecclesiastes for.
Let's do Ecclesiastes.
Oh, let's do Ecclesiastes. I just saw the first line.
That's a very unusual book of the Bible. We should take a look at that. Okay. Okay, David. Father Dave, would you like to read Ecclesiastes first?
Sure.
Excellent.
Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. I, the teacher, when king over Israel in Jerusalem, applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see all is vanity and a chasing after wind. I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish? Yet they will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair concerning all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain with which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night their minds do not rest. This also is vanity. Excuse my voice, I've got a kind of hoarse voice.
Yeah, you got a little dry voice there. Thanks for soldiering through there. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ecclesiastes is really, I'm not any kind of expert. It's really comes from a different world, a different take. The speaker seems to be more into, more interested in really drilling down on the human condition, and what we're about and what we're struggling with. Whereas a lot of times the Old Testament, it's stories about the tribes of Israel and how God can't seem to get them to act straighten up and fly right, and it's more about how, God, the relationship between God and man. But you look at this one here, it really is someone kind of wringing his hands over how things don't seem to be fair. Things don't seem to work out. You can struggle and struggle, and yet, you don't get credit. And so, I think he's got a good fix on the human condition, on people's discouragement sometimes, or people's natural human frustrations. Mike?
Reminds me, golly, of the French play Huis Clos, or in English, No Exit, where there are three people in a little chamber in hell, and they're discussing things.
I don't know the story, Mike.
Oh,
It's by
Jean-Paul
Sartre, right?
Sartre wrote this play. It's not the most brilliant play in the world, but it's a dialogue or trialogue between three people who are condemned forever to a little room with terrible furniture. But it's about hopelessness, really.
Yeah.
These guys.
It
David?
reminds me of the epitaph on John Gay's gravestone. He was a 17th century writer, and he had written on there, life is a jest and all things show it. I thought so once and now I know it.
Yeah. Henry, what's your take?
Yeah, well, this reminds me, my favorite story of unclaimed buried treasure in America is the Saddle Ridge Horde, which was discovered by a couple in 2013 in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada in California. And they found a series of metal cans that contained 1,427 gold pieces, which now has a worth of about $10 million. And they were from the 1840s and 50s up to 1894. And no one knows who buried it. And the most common suspicion is that it was some eccentric person who didn't like banks who buried it and then died before he could tell the people he loved where it was.
You know, that's a perfect example. I took this reading very personally, but in Henry's example, the way I'm imagining it is there's someone who toiled for mining that gold, for finding that gold, and was worried about what was going to happen to it and all of his work. So he buried it so it could be then used at some later date by him or by somebody else that he thought he could trust. But I mean, I don't know about you all, but I work on some projects, and I've worked on some projects where I have toiled. I have worked hours and hours on end and have given my life and soul to that. And yet, I the discernment and discovery process of the diocese is a good example where the rewards are being reaped from that work. But I certainly don't have any credit for the work that I put into it. But I hear every now and then I get to talk with my cohort, and I know that some changes will be coming, and I really feel that angst that about the changes that are going to be made. Will they improve it or will they take away? So, I mean, I can relate to this reading. So, and that's a very good example of it. And I'm sure everybody has an example of having worked on a project or done something very special, and then you had to let it go for the next generation, whether it's generation of parent and child or a generation of this manager to that manager or this implementer to that implementer.
Yeah, absolutely. I got all, I realized as Father Dave was reading, I got all tied up in the toil and the ingratitude and the lack of credit and all that. I say, dang it, yeah, we can all relate to that. But of course, that meant the teacher over and over again saying, hey, man, it's not about you. It's vanity. That's vanity. Vanity. That's vanity. It's not all about you. And that's one of the hardest things there is probably for anybody to understand, really, to really embrace, to give up your vanity, give up your idea that this is all about me. I want credit. I need credit, and therefore give me credit. That sort of thing.
And it's exactly like in my example, that's something that I've had to give up the credit and so on because I left. So there it is. And you're right, it's not about me, but it doesn't take away from the feelings. So this author is just really nailing it.
Yeah, very human pathos there. Let Lori go one. Let Lori go. Mike,
Okay. This reminded me of a title of a book, and that became a blah movie, but the book, and then I wanted to see what it was about. It's the Bonfires of the Vanity, Bonfire of the Vanities.
Bonfire of the Vanities, yeah.
Yes, it was 1497, Florence, Italy. The city was under the sway of the Dominican priest Girolamo Savonarola, who ordered the burning of objects the church authorities considered sinful, such as cosmetics, mirrors, books, and art, the vanities.
Yeah. Mike, and then Henry.
Oh, I want to point out that Matt ran a series on his Facebook page on this book. He used the Hebrew name, the Kohelet, or the teacher. But what's said about this book is that it is a very modern writing that's included in the Hebrew Bible. It's like the existential philosopher I mentioned, Jean-Paul Sartre.
Right. And then Henry was going to comment.
Yeah. And, one of the things that's just great about listening to Deacon Vic and the rest of you and seeing your smiles of agreement and internal nods, we go back to Shakespeare, who knew as much about human nature as any of us, and more than most. Remember that great line from King Lear, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have an ungrateful child. And oh boy, folks, I have had my buttons pushed more than once.
Right. Nothing irritates you more than being ingratitude.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That is number one.
Oh yeah.
But okay, here. Before we leave Ecclesiastes trivia. What famous rock and roll song from the '60s takes the lyrics right out of Ecclesiastes? Deacon Victoria, raise your hand first. Go ahead.
It's Simon and Garfunkel.
No, not Simon and Garfunkel. Henry?
Turn by the Birds.
That's it, Henry.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Turn by the Birds. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was writing rock and roll songs, I tried to write one based on Ecclesiastes. It wasn't quite as good as the Birds song. Turn though.
But where does the turn? I can hear it in my head right now. But where does it quote from this particular selection?
It's
No.
It's from
It's
Ecclesiastes.
second or third or fourth chapter.
Not this chapter.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For everything turn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a season, turn.
It sounds so much better than we did.
Look, Ann is really getting.
Yeah.
Whoever started listening to this recording will be sorry they did at this point. All right.
Yeah.
I just accidentally started a video playing it, but I was trying to figure out who actually wrote that.
Oh,
Was it the Birds or was it somebody else?
that I'm not sure of.
I don't know.
You have to go in deeper on Google to figure that out. I assumed it was the Birds. Roger McGuinn,
Yeah.
or Chris Hillman, one of those Bird songwriters. All right. Anything else on Ecclesiastes? Okay. Anybody? Okay. So we should go on to read Psalm 49. Laura, do you want to read Psalm 49?
Sure.
Okay.
That's long. Okay. Hear this, all you peoples. Hearken, all you who dwell in the world. you of high degree and low, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and my heart shall meditate on understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb and set forth my riddle upon the harp. Why should I be afraid in evil days when the wickedness of those at my heels surrounds me? The wickedness of those who put their trust in their goods and boast of their riches. We can never ransom ourselves or deliver to God the price of our life. For the ransom of our life is so great that we should never have enough to pay it. In order to live forever and ever and never see the grave. For we see that the wise die also, like the dull and stupid, they perish, and leave their wealth to those who come after them. Their graves shall be their homes forever, their dwelling places from generation to generation, though they call the lands after their own names. Even though honored, they cannot live forever. They are like the beasts that perish. Boy, that's oof.
Encouraging.
Well, you know, it kind of falls right on Ecclesiastes, you know, doesn't it? It strikes me that way. They all
Absolutely.
strike you that way. Yeah. Also kind of reminds you of, you know, remember, O man, the dust thou art, you know, and unto dust thou shalt return. So get your head straight, you know. What struck you? What struck you all about the psalm?
The hopelessness, the uselessness, the pointlessness of life. We cannot ransom ourselves from God, that we should live forever and ever and never see the grave. Love that line.
Yeah. The graves shall be their homes forever. Oof.
You know, it says to me that we need to go through life with a level of humility. That we can't, you know, we can puff ourselves up as much as we want to, but really we are humble human beings, one speck of dust in the great universe.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry, you got a comment?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's my favorite thing that Lori read was, "Wise die also, like the dull and stupid, they perish." And you know, I was thinking of the guy I'm named after. He and my father were best friends at Princeton. They were both Rhodes Scholars at Oxford. Henry was a Harvard Fellow, and my father had to get a real job. And my father was 4F, and Henry entered the Navy in World War II. And a kamikaze got him on the morning of May 4th, 1945. And it ripped through his stateroom and blew up in sick bay. And he died of third-degree wounds, burns, and never woke up from a coma later that day. And Henry just made one mistake that day. He thought that they had knocked out all 12 to 14 kamikazes. So he left his post in the Combat Information Center and went down to his stateroom just in time to get the 15th plane, which had come over Okinawa, and radar had not picked it up. And he done a lot more in life than he ever did in death. He was 31. And, you know, people, you know, the smart die quick, just like the other ones.
Yeah. I just agree with you a little bit, Mike. I didn't see this as sort of a hopeless or despairing. It's more like get your mind set on the right things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just go blindly through life, just thinking about yourself and you're being selfish considering only your own needs, only your own interests. You know, consider keep in mind the bigger picture, you know, and the bigger picture involving, you know, ultimately your heavenly reward, you know. So I think that's a pretty old-fashioned sentiment, you know.
There's more in this,
Christian sentiment.
there's more in this psalm than what I focused on. Listen to this, all you people, hearken to all you who dwell in the world, you of high degree. My mouth shall speak wisdom, my heart shall meditate on understanding, I'll incline my heart, and so on. So there's a little more than just lamenting the fact that
Mhm.
they will not live forever. They are like beasts that perish.
Mhm.
It's really,
Right.
really talking about people who fail to exhibit or pursue wisdom.
Right. That's a great take on that. I think the way it sets up the
Mhm.
beginning with this more wiser person, how he's going about his business compared to some others that he critiques. Hey, Deacon Victoria, what did you want to say?
Well, and I'm picking up with what Mike said in those same 3 verses that it points out that, my focus should be to read and learn and inwardly digest and meditate on the wisdom from Scripture, on the wisdom of God's word. I will incline my ear to a proverb. And all of that is supposed to lead us to outwards, to helping others and reaching out to others. And that's the take I'm getting from it.
Nice. Yeah. Other thoughts on the psalm? Yeah, David.
This is only half of it, actually. It's 20 verses. And the last verse, I think, sums up the whole point. The person who has riches without understanding is like the beasts that perish. I think that phrase, a person who is rich without understanding,
Yeah.
that's important.
Doesn't Jesus use that phrasing? It seems like he does in the gospel, riches without understanding. That's
Mhm.
familiar to me.
They hear and do not understand.
Yeah.
Well, they see and do not understand, something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's from a parable or something he said.
Okay, Victoria. Pete Seeger wrote the song Turn.
Mhm.
Turn. That's okay. That rings a bell. That's
That
interesting.
makes sense,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I've seen him singing it too in some old videos. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Laurie. Yeah. I remember seeing old videos of Pete Seeger singing that.
Oh,
Birds probably made a lot more money than Pete Seeger ever did, unfortunately.
I'm sure you're right.
That's an example. I hope he got lots of royalties, because otherwise he'd have to decide it's all vanity, not worry about it.
Pete Seeger was the the grandson of Alan Seeger, who wrote "I Have a Rendezvous with Death." He was an American in the French Foreign Legion in World War I.
Wow.
Okay.
Pete Seeger was his grandson.
Okay.
Wow.
Interesting.
So poetry ran in the family then.
Yeah.
That that's something I've seen a lot of lately about what runs in the family. I posted a video today about Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Andrea Bocelli, and their 3 sons were up singing, and just beautifully.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then somebody said that about our kids.
Yeah,
know
they
how
Oh yeah, they take after me and Laura, that's for sure. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Wholeheartedly.
They're so proud.
And then people writing who were also, I was thinking about, I have a book by Christopher Rice, and his mom, Anne Rice, was, the famous writer.
Well, then of course,
What's that, Henry?
Alan Seeger was the uncle of Pete Seeger.
The uncle.
The uncle.
Who was? I'm sorry.
Alan Seeger was the
Oh.
uncle of Pete Seeger.
That's right. Yeah, uncle.
Okay. All right. Deacon Victoria?
so I was going to say about things running in families. Robert E. Lee. Well, there's a ton of priests and bishops in that Lee family. Even down to now, there's an active priest in, I don't know who it is, but remember in the Polly Murray video, and when she was ordained and she preached and celebrated, and the priest at that church was somebody, Chris Lee or something. Well, he's part of that Lee family.
Mhm.
And there's another family in the Episcopal Church called St. George. And I wish I could remember whether that's the first name or last name, but there's several hymns that were written by a St. George, and there were several priests and bishops, going back a couple of 300 years, a couple of hundred years. So it is interesting to see how certain things do run through the family. It says a whole lot about genetics, I think.
Well, and it's also, that's when my mom died, that was what I said at her funeral, that the people go on, you can see it in the things that we did and we've done, and now our children are doing, that we got from our parents and our grandparents, so that they're living on through the things that we take pride in cooking and in singing and in doing the different things that we do.
Lori, that might be the point from the Ecclesiastes and this song. It's the toil that we do now. We don't see the fruits of it, but they may be coming through in the next generations.
Yes.
And so there's a hope.
Mm-hmm.
Always a bigger picture, a bigger context that you may not see when you're so worried about your vanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I've got the poem "I Have a Rendezvous with Death" by Alan Seeger right in front of me, and let me read it because it goes right back to what Lori and Deacon Vic say. I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade. When spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air, I have a rendezvous with death when spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill. When spring comes round again this year and the first meadow flowers appear, God knows 'twere better to be deep, pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, when hushed awakenings are dear. But I've a rendezvous with death at midnight in some flaming town, when spring trips north again this year, and I to my pledged word am true, I shall not fail that rendezvous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Man, this has been a very literary gathering today. All right, nice. Anything
Well,
else?
he was killed. He was killed
Yes.
towards the end of
Okay.
the First War.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to hear what our expert on World War I poetry has to say about that particular poem.
It's the best known, excuse me, the best known American poem coming out of World War I. And it's really foreshadowing his death. It's, I don't know, I can't really say that much more. I mean, it's got great rhyme, rhythm, and everything else. And it's not the only poem he had written, of course. He'd written a lot more. He was an American that found himself in Paris when war broke out. And the French army wouldn't take foreigners, but the French Foreign Legion would. And so he joined the Foreign Legion and did well for a year or so until he was killed. But it's a marvelous poem. I really don't know what else I could say about it.
What's
Right
the
now.
name again?
I have a rendezvous with death.
I know, but the writer.
Alan Seeger. And he was killed on the Somme in 1916.
All right. Well, that's interesting stuff. Anything else on the psalm? We parroted a lot out of that psalm. A lot more than I was realizing, right? All right. Okay, let's go on to the epistle. And I know, given Mike's devotion to St. Paul, I think it's only fair that he should read Colossians for us. And so nobody knows St. Paul like Mike knows St. Paul.
That's right. No one appreciates him either.
That's right. Go ahead, Mike. Read Colossians for us.
All right, but first, I want to take a moment of personal privilege. The Bible has been beating me up for the past 3 Sundays. One Sunday, a lawyer gets bad rap. And 2 Sundays later, Paul cautions us not to be led astray by philosophy, which was my undergraduate major.
Well, you know,
All right, here we go.
if you want a lesson in humility, just be a lawyer and read the Bible. That'll give you a little lesson.
That's a mistranslation.
All right, Mike, go ahead. Colossians 3.
If you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly: fornication, impurity, passion, evil, desire, and greed, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. These are the ways you also once followed when you were living that life. But now you must get rid of all such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self with its practices, and have clothed yourselves with a new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its creator. In that renewal, there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all in all.
Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We've heard this before.
Well, you know, it's just rolling right on. Cast off human desires. You know, human frailties, human distractions, right? And but you know, Paul ultimately says, you know, the way to get there is to focus on, you know, purify yourself by focusing on Christ. You know, and so that's kind of the ultimate, right? The ultimate path for being able to cast off human desires.
You know, following on from last week's reading from Paul, let no one make you ashamed. Related, he seems to denigrate exceptionalism, or that some people are holier than other people. And I can't help but thinking he must be tempering his letter, because he mentions these Scythians. Are some Scythians lurking around in Colossae? Maybe
Well,
so.
they were in the neighborhood. If you remember Herodotus, he's got, I think, chapter 4 of Herodotus's histories deals with the Scythians who are on the other side of the Black Sea.
Oh yeah, could have been trading partners.
Well, you know, I think that's the most. It's kind of, you know, you're kind of this lesson kind of beats you down for a while. You know, if you're just a garden variety miserable sinner, you know, you say, dang, man, there's a lot of things to cast off here. You know, that Paul. But then I like how he ends it up with talking about, you know, in that renewal, strip off your old self. In that renewal, there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all in all. So that's a, you know, that's very uplifting and very heartening, you know, as opposed to, man, you've got a lot to cast off if you expect to, you know, be a follower of Christ.
Well,
Yeah, Henry, here you go, Mike.
Okay.
go ahead, Henry.
This reminds me of a story that I heard when I was in my early 20s, living in a small town in North Carolina. And on Saturday mornings, I would go to this drugstore that had a breakfast counter, and I would order breakfast and listen to these attorneys tell stories. And folks, as you guys know, no one tells stories like lawyers. And so this one guy was going white-tailed deer hunting on the coast. And one Sunday morning, the party shot a possum en route to a worship of the service. And the service began. And after a couple of choral works, the preacher, it was time to bring his message. And he might have been using the text of Colossians, this text of Colossians as his text, because he was saying, you know, God wants you to stop this. God wants you to stop that. God wants you to do something else. And then his eyes locked on this dead possum, which they had spread up on a low-hanging crossbeam. And his words failed him. And he said, God darn, what a rat. And that broke up the religious service for a while.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. I hope I didn't offend you.
That's the Shaggy Dog story for the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Or a shaggy possum.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah.
Or Laurie, Mike.
No,
then-
go ahead. No, I will.
Mike, then Laurie.
The this literary technique of Paul's, there is no longer such and such and such and such, such and such and such and such. We heard that before about 3 weeks ago. No longer, in a more famous rendition, no longer Greek nor Jew, no longer. And he goes on to say there's no longer either male or female. And here's another similar thing where he has this immense inclusiveness. One of the things that marks the Christian religion as opposed to the Jewish religion is its inclusiveness, its willingness to take, anyway, you don't have to be Abraham's son to be with us. We'll take you in. God's mercy has redeemed you. That's all I want to say. I know our great listening audience will profit from this.
Yeah, Laurie, did you want to?
Yeah. I was just thinking about how if you did this in this renewal, there would be love and finding love. And today in our cornerstone, we talked a lot about something that James Baldwin said, that white people in this country will have quite enough to do in learning how to accept and love themselves and each other. And when they have achieved this, which will not be tomorrow and may very well be never, the Negro problem will no longer exist, for it will no longer be needed. So if we do this, then those problems, it's something we need to do. We need to be able to accept and love, and then all those problems will become not gone away, but they're beginning to go away.
Yeah, we'll all be one at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got time to read the gospel, and I've got a hard stop at 8 o'clock. I've got to get to church and meet some clients. So let's go through the gospel and see if we got any quick takes on that before we call it a night. How about that? Deacon Victoria, you're always our gospel reader, so I think you should be our gospel reader now too.
Yeah, this will be a good time for me to practice.
Okay.
Okay, a reading from Luke. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crop. Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there will I store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.
Yeah. Thank you, Deacon Victoria. Right, all the lessons we've discussed in such great detail obviously lead right up to Luke for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah, that's interesting how these lectionary guys do a good job of connecting everything together, connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a strong line all the way through. You don't always find that.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it is particularly strong, the connection between the various scriptures tonight. Yeah.
I'm reminded, some of you may remember when General Convention was here in 2018, and we had that revival where everybody got invited to come to the auditorium to listen to, and Bishop Curry preached. And I remember the core of the message that he preached was that greed was the core of all evil. You have all these venial sins that the Roman Catholics like to talk about, and I forgot the words for them, but you know which ones they are. And greed is one of them. But what he was saying was greed is the core of all the other sins.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mentioned here. So
Yeah.
store not up for yourselves riches on earth, where
So
moth and rust doth corrupt.
Right.
So quit fussing about all the toil and work and things that you've done that is going to be left up to everybody else. We got
a lot to work on from this.
We do, don't we?
You know, this is not a whole lot different from what you might hear in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, plenty to chew on for us mortals, from the night's lessons. Absolutely. Well, I've got a hard stop. I hope that's okay. I'm hoping, Deacon Victoria, you can lead us out with a prayer for tonight.
Okay. Well, why don't we say the Lord's Prayer tonight? All of us. Let's have a little cacophony of sound tonight.
Mine might be a bit hoarse.
Okay, that'll be good.
Perfect.
The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
For thine
is the kingdom,
and the power,
and the
glory, forever and
ever.
ever. Amen.
I bet that was a beautiful melody for God to hear.
Very nice.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm stopping the recording.
Okay.
Deacon Victoria, can you
Yes,
stay
ma'am.
on?